Welcome to another edition of Political Power Ranker. I'm Chris Berg, Political Director for Nexstar affiliates across America. And joining me live with me right now, at least, on tape for everybody else, Spencer Kimball, Polling Director, Emerson College. Spence, how are you today?
We're good, Chris. Glad to see you're keeping a pulse on America at a busy airport, and we'll give you some data today on California.
I'm keeping the pulse, and one of the busiest airports in America right here in Dallas-Fort Worth, but we need to get the numbers because that's the most important thing.
Yeah, so let's jump over. We did a poll this week in California, and we gave you a little bit of a bonus here. Not only are we looking at the governor's race, but we do a subset of Los Angeles mayor's race. So we're going to look at likely voters for that June 2nd primary, both for the governor statewide and the Los Angeles mayor's race.
So let's look at those numbers. You've got the governor's race first. Interesting dynamics. Things are shifting a little bit. What do you have, Spence?
Exactly, Chris. It looks like the governor's race is coming a little bit more into focus. We can see Eric Swalwell has continued to pick up a little bit of momentum there. His numbers have gone up another 3 points. He's doing better with those older voters, as we've seen, the 60-plus age group and the post-grads. We also see the two Republicans battling Hilton and Bianco for potentially second place or into that runoff. Hilton is holding a slight lead, 38-34 amongst registered Republicans, and that's playing out here in these numbers. And then we see Tom Steyer doing well with the black vote, and then Katie Porter has lost a little bit more ground this month. We'll see if she can hold that on.
What do you think about the bottom three candidates? So you got Javier Becerra, you got Villaraigosa, and not on your sheet is Matt Mahan. What do you say about those guys? What are you seeing?
Well, we're not seeing much of a base of support for these three candidates. And because of that, they're not growing as we would like to see them if they're running in this race. You know, there's not a strong group of male voters or postgraduates for any one of these candidates. So until they start growing that base and be able to build off of that, right now they're just floating in the field.
Let's bring in our expert, Nikki Lorenzo, reporter from Fox 40 in Sacramento. As I think you're being called here to board too, Nikki, just so you know.
Okay, we'll make this quick so I can make my flight.
Yeah, exactly. What do you see in those numbers?
Well, you can see that Eric Swalwell, since he's gotten into the race, he's sort of maintained that lead on name ID. The money's working for Tom Steyer. The two Republicans, you're seeing them sort of battle it out. The social media wars have been playing between Chad Bianco and Steve Hilton. You know, Katie Porter, who obviously came into this race when it started, 2 years ago now, was considered the front runner, you know, had a couple of missteps there with the viral videos, and people counted her out, but she's hanging in there. When you talked about Antonio Villaraigosa, Matt Mahan, the mayor of San Jose, and Javier Becerra really not gaining some traction. This was a big story in California last week. We had the filing deadline on Friday, and the head of the California Democratic Party came out and said, okay, if candidates aren't viable, it's time to get out. And all these Democrats think that they're viable. They just don't. They think that this race is a jump ball, and any of these top candidates like a Swalwell or a Steyer can have a misstep, and that could surge one of them. So it's an exciting race to cover.
Well, someone referred to it as "why not me" race in California. You know, everyone kind of being at that same level. Everyone's looking at it going, why not me? Why couldn't I be the next governor? If I get a bump or someone drops out because of a problem, all of a sudden I'm there. I'm the last person standing. What are your thoughts on that? Because if they divide the vote, it could put two Republicans as the top two finishers, which is what California does for its primary.
Yeah, and that's the big through line too in terms of the Democrats. That's what they were worried about. That is what I heard from folks who were at the convention a couple of weeks ago. Katie Porter actually spoke with one of our reporters, Aton Wallace, and basically said some of these Democrats need to drop out because there's, you know, a real possibility of that happening. We have a data expert out here in California. He crunched the numbers. He has that about 10 to 12%. I talked to one of the leading Republicans, Steve Hilton, a couple of weeks ago. He doesn't even see that, though. He thinks that the way things are going right now, that it's more likely that two Democrats get through, and he's calling for his, you know, top competitor to get out of the race. And it's interesting to listen to their messaging, you know, how much of it is political and them jockeying for position, and how much is it a reality. But for the first time in a long time, we have a race here in California. If you go back to when Newsom first ran, he was considered the front runner. Villaraigosa was in it then, and he didn't really have, it was a Newsom Villaraigosa race, and he didn't really have a challenger. And now we have this race, and I know you're going to get into this, Spencer, too. The undecideds are still pretty high, right? And so the only person that's on the air with ads right now speaking to voters is Tom Steyer. The mayor of San Jose, Matt Mahan, has had a couple of ads from a super PAC on the air. Antonio has had a couple of ads, but the only person that has really gone, gangbusters, so to speak, has been Tom Steyer, and he's got a new ad out every single week. And look, we know this. We all cover politics here. Money talks, and it's working for Tom Steyer.
And Spence, what do you say about those undecided? Why is that growing as opposed to declining like we saw in the last poll?
Well, as these new candidates enter into the race, it starts getting voters to think about, oh, maybe I'll vote for this candidate. And not without a clear front runner on either side, these voters are open to these ideas. And the candidates come out, they start putting out some ads. They say, oh, I kind of like what that person's saying. And that's what we're seeing in this giant field. And that's why I think we have so many undecideds, is that you have so many different candidates to choose from that the voters are still looking around. We still got about 3 months, but eventually we're going to see that tighten. But it looks like Swalwell is picking up some of that support along with Steyer on the left, and we'll see if that trend continues.
Nikki, one last question just about this horse race. What out there could make something shift and change to, further push Swalwell ahead or lift up another candidate? Is it money, or is it endorsements, or is there anything out there that could kind of make a difference in this race in the next 3 months?
So it definitely could be, obviously money is huge, and all of the campaigns are telling me, we've got money coming, just wait, we're going to get out there. And also too, that's just jockeying for viability right now to ensure that we're in it. Also, the Oppo research hasn't dropped yet. Is there a big bombshell out there that could shift in terms of endorsements? Governor Newsom, obviously, we're going to talk about his numbers in a minute here, a force across the nation right now, and as he's positioning himself for a presidential run, still pretty popular in California in terms of you look at past governors. And he has said he's going to sit it out. Just last week, though, he was asked about it, and he said, oh, I haven't really looked at it, but this is the first week that I'm really starting to pay attention, and I'm not going to weigh in right now, but if I need to, I will. And that could potentially shift something depending on how Californians are feeling about Gavin Newsom at that time. And that could change with the news cycle. But I mean, it's just so close right now. I mean, in terms of previous governors, I don't know if anyone's, clamoring for, Jerry Brown to endorse them, some of the old guard in California, because voters, are looking for change right now.
Right. And then one last person just to talk about, because her numbers have shifted and continue to shift, and that's Katie Porter. And she has not been visible since she had those two viral moments. What have you been hearing about her campaign?
So she has not been doing any media, really. I think I looked back. I think there might have been one interview with CNN, and it was more focused on President Trump, doing a lot of podcasts. I will say she is speaking at a lot of forums, traveling up and down the state, visiting communities, talking to voters. But in terms of traditional sort of media interviews, she did some interviews at the convention. But she's just sort of been laying low and out there campaigning and hoping that just, the dust has settled after those viral videos and the news cycle has turned, and that's sort of old news. That's kind of the way I see it and what I'm hearing from people too.
Right, but I mean visibility too. I'm talking about media visibility. We're hearing about the shoe leather visibility, and but that's what I meant in reference to that for Katie Porter. All right, Spence, you got another slide, more numbers. Let's look at that.
There's more data here. We're going to take a look at favorabilities. President Trump is underwater. That's no surprise. But look at Gavin Newsom's number. He bounced back this month with a positive rating. And probably more concerning when we get into that mayor's race, Karen Bass, the mayor of Los Angeles, is underwater nearly 2-1. So she's got a lot of room to make up in her reelection bid.
That is a big number. Is that overcomable? Is that a word? I'm not even sure it's a word, but can she kind of climb out of that and still win?
Well, the 47% is very concerning for the incumbent because obviously you want to get to that 50% threshold. And if 47% are already against you, that's a lot of ground to make up. But with that said, we've seen mayor races move a lot. Generally, it's from an outsider picking up momentum like we saw with Mamdani. But we've also seen incumbents who they don't really campaign while they're the incumbent, but as the election gears up, they start telling voters what they've done well and the voters buy in. At this point, it looks like Bass is underwater and she's going to have to create a message that convinces voters that she should get reelected. She's never lost an election, so we'll see if somebody can knock her off and make an upset.
This is a perfect time to bring in the fourth member of this team, and that's Pete Wilgorm from KTLA, managing editor. Big focus on politics coming out of LA with Pete. He's been in the LA area for a couple decades doing politics. Pete, thanks for joining us. Your maiden voyage here on PPR, though he's been very helpful behind the scenes. Pete, what do you when you look at that number for Karen Bass, what are you thinking?
I've been watching her for months, and Spencer's right. She's not very likable. And, I look at those numbers and I see for a long time it was her race to lose, and she's been losing it with steady problems and ongoing issues related to the fire aftermath and everything that's going on here in LA. And now you see a couple of people surging in, including Nithya Raman and Spencer Pratt. And I think it's their race to win now as she continues to erode support. I mean, those are two formidable contenders. Anyone who I know behind the scenes, there's a lot of people that did not take Spencer Pratt seriously, but you need to take him seriously. This guy's got a platform. He's got an axe to grind. His house was one of the homes destroyed in the Palisades fire. He's been very vocal on TikTok and every other platform in terms of we need to take out the trash in LA. You've Nithya Raman, who was a supporter of Bass. Bass supported Raman, and Raman came in at the last minute to enter this race when a couple of other people that we thought might run didn't. I think Raman smells blood as well and thinks this could be hers to win. And what you saw with Mamdani in New York, you might see with Raman here.
Tell me a little bit more about Pratt and Raman, a little bit about them and who they are and why they're in the race.
Well, so, Raman is a Democrat socialist, although she doesn't, aspire to all the different policies of what they talk about. She does have a record to run on here in LA. She represents a whole swath of the city from the valley to the east. And she's been running saying that she feels that the city has let down the people in basic services, trash collection, homelessness and all that. But she also is going to be the person that you can look at her record and you can go down Ventura Boulevard in the valley and see that people are still struggling with the homeless issue, and businesses have seen customers leave because they don't want to deal with the homelessness issue. So I think Raman, she feels fresh in terms of the ideas she brings to the table, but she also has a record from the last few years that I think people are going to judge her on critically, especially when it comes to the Valley and voters in the Valley. Spencer Pratt, I mean, he's a little bit of an intangible, right? He's Heidi and Spencer. He is social media. He is a younger generation. We couldn't get interviews with him when he, was entering the race because he had a non-disclosure agreement for a reality show, which may have been The Masked Singer, because Heidi was just unmasked a couple of weeks ago, and he was with her when she was. So this guy, I mean, it's a very LA story in terms of this guy running for office, but he really does have a message. He was impacted heavily by the fires, the Palisades fire. His home was destroyed there. He's been railing since right after the fires on why were the reservoirs empty? Why didn't we not have enough water in the fire hydrants? Where was the fire staffing? He has been driving that train for months and months now. And that's the platform that he's running on, is that, City Hall let everyone down, that it's time for new leadership. I think he filled a vacuum that maybe Rick Caruso could have filled if Caruso had jumped into the race, because they're both kind of driving that same accountability train from the fires. And I tell you, people who did not take Spencer Pratt seriously months ago and thought that he was just kind of loud, abrasive guy on a soapbox, they're starting to take him seriously now.
Got it. Well, you know what? We have so much more data from Spencer coming from California, but we do have to take a quick break. So we'll be right back with more California, and we've got another state we're going to talk about before the end of the show. So stick around for both. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Political Power Ranker. Chris Berg, political director of our Nexstar Media Group. Spencer Kimball from Emerson College. He's the man with the numbers and the polling. Nikki Lorenzo, Fox 40 political reporter, anchor extraordinaire, and Pete Wilgerin from KTLA. I'm going to say W, that's the other side of the country. KTLA, managing editor and political wizard for our station there. I'm coming to you from a very busy Dallas-Fort Worth airport, so my apologies for any noise that may get in the way from our information. But Spence, let's pitch it back to you because you got some more numbers about California.
Yeah, and let's jump into that mayor's race here in Los Angeles. What we did was a subset of 350 people. Los Angeles is about 6% of the total population, so we squeezed them back down in that big sample. But here in Los Angeles, you can see 51% of voters are undecided. So you have an incumbent mayor with over a majority of people saying, oh, I'm not sure we're going to go in that direction. And then we start to look at those candidates and Pratt and Rahman, who are sitting there at 10 and 9, that they could pick up some momentum. I think the biggest concern is Bass sitting at 20% as the incumbent. That's a pretty low number for an incumbent, and it would be interesting to know why or what's holding her down right now.
And totally not a surprise, I don't think, when I look at those numbers. She's
bad headline after bad headline, right, Pete?
1,000%. Even in just the last few weeks, you think she was finally getting over the hump after the 1-year anniversary of the fires. Then came out this new exclusive LA Times reporting that the mayor's office leaned on the city to change their after action report to make it look less like the city was to blame for the fires and less like the response was failed from LAFD. And there she is right back in the middle of it again. This is going to be the thing that dogs her the entire year. If she does get on a debate stage, same thing. I think she's got big problems.
She's holding on to some Democratic support. She's getting about 28% of registered Democrats, but Rahman is taking about 14%. And over the next couple of months, it'll be interesting to see if the city councilor is able to make up ground with those registered Democrats, because that's really Bass's base. And we'll see if she can hold that and then transfer a little bit more momentum as the election gears up.
Does that large number of undecided say something about Bass or just the race in general?
Oh, it says something about the incumbent, Bass. So she's if I'm the incumbent, you got to be very concerned. If I'm one of these other candidates, I think I have an opportunity here for a major upset in one of the biggest cities in the world. So with that number of undecided voters, it's going to be interesting to see who gets their message out first and who can convince those voters that they're the better alternative, because it looks like we have 2 horses that are vying to be able to take on Bass, and that would potentially split the vote. And so we'll see if there's a coalition, they coalesce around one of these 2.
So let's zoom back out again because we've got some Governor Newsom numbers you want to talk about. And what are you seeing here, Spencer?
Well, I think it's just important to notice that with Newsom last month when we reported he saw his undecideds jump up, and we said, well, let's see if that number holds or if it comes back down. What we see this month is that number came back down. He did slightly better with those older voters over the course of the last couple of weeks, and the Hispanic voter shifted slightly back towards Newsom. So his undecideds are down, and his positive rating has stuck around the mid-40s the whole way through. Of course, amongst Democrats, it's much higher. So when we talked about his endorsement in one of these primaries could carry the day for either the mayor's race or in the gubernatorial election.
Nikki, wouldn't that just kind of clear the field if he just said, I'm going to pick X candidate?
Yeah, that would be huge. And also, since we're talking about the mayor's race, he was asked in an interview about Karen Bass. and her running for mayor again. And I thought this was notable that he said, well, I broadly support her. I broadly endorse her, kind of giving him some wiggle room. Obviously, she's an establishment candidate. She's the incumbent. They have a relationship. But a broad endorsement, I haven't really heard it characterized. That didn't seem like a solid stamp of approval
Nope.
there. But yeah, I mean, in this governor's race, any single one of these candidates would want to gobble up that endorsement right now. But the governor has, big ambitions. A young man in a hurry right now, touting his book, and he wants to back a winner. I mean, he wants to back a sure winner. He doesn't want to endorse a candidate and have something come out, and then he's on record backing a loser.
I'm not sure which candidate you're speaking of as you mentioned that. I'll let the audience figure that out. But we have one last slide, Spencer, talking about what's important to Californians right now.
So we asked them again, what's their most important issue? The economy still is the most important issue. What's interesting here is you see threats to democracy. We've seen that pop up in other states, but it's not popping in California, which is a pretty liberal state. So it looks like pocketbook issues are going to drive this election. What's interesting about the homeless issue, on a separate question, about 55% think the homeless problem is not getting better. So that might become more of a central issue in these campaigns moving forward. But the economy seems to be the driver here in 2026.
That bode true for both you, Pete and Nikki?
I would say especially watch gas prices in the next few weeks. They're already surging here. People are upset, and that's going to go right to your point about the economy being the top issue.
Yeah, Pete's spot on there. That's what all the candidates, their message is: the economy, the economy, the economy. I know we talked about Katie Porter and kind of where she's been. She spoke on a panel last week, and she basically said, all the Democrats up here, you have a fighter in terms of who's going to fight Trump, no matter who you elect. That's baked in with us as a California Democrat. But affordability, people can't afford to live here. And that's what the next governor needs to tackle.
All right. Now, there's a lot of sunshine in California, but we are going to shift our focus just ever so quickly to a place that doesn't have as much sun, but it's a great place to grow up, I'm sure. South Dakota. We've got a House race and we've got a governor's race. Kristi Noem left to go to join the president. Now she's looking for another opportunity, but her replacement is in a little bit of trouble, Spence.
Yeah, exactly, Chris. So we've jumped in. We get a little daily double here at PPR. We did South Dakota, the Fighting Sioux, and we can see that we did a statewide poll, and these are of primary voters as well, Republican primary voters. And as we jump in there, you can see the incumbent, Larry Roden's only at 17%. There's actually two candidates above him, businessman and the Congressman, Dusty Johnson. So Johnson's in a pretty strong position considering he's going against an incumbent. Now, remember, Roden gets appointed, not elected, and that's going to be a tough race for him to try to win back.
And now we're looking at another data point. You've got the House race up there as well.
We do. Not as competitive here. So here we can see Jackley with a pretty strong lead. He's over 50%. Most likely, he's going to run away with this. So the House race, I think, is pretty much settled. Jackley will take it in a landslide. But the governor's race, we could have an upset there with a potential new Republican governor knocking out Larry Roden.
Now, for those of you who are diehard PPR fans, I'm going to let you know we've got two debates up there. We've got a governor's debate and a House debate in the coming weeks on Calo TV. So keep looking for that. That's going to be appointment television for South Dakota for sure. All right. Now we're winding down. The chaos around me has died down as well a little bit. So, Spence, here we go. Winners and losers of the week. Who's up and who's down?
Well, let's start on who's up. The glass is half full for Eric Swalwell. We've seen his numbers now jump up in the last two polls. He went from 12 to 13, 14. Now he's up to 17. We're going to see if that momentum continues.
And who is down?
Trending in that opposite direction is Katie Porter and Karen Bass. But Karen Bass really down this week, only at 20% in her ballot test. Her favorability is way underwater. So right now, the mayor of Los Angeles is down this week.
Let's go to Nikki real quick. Any final thoughts on up and down and what you saw in this week's polls for California?
Yeah, Eric Swalwell still is he's going to enjoy the results of this poll. I just find it fascinating. The undecideds are back up, which just is the theme of this race. It's anyone's game right now, which makes it, as a political journalist out here in California, really, really fun to cover.
Pete, any final thoughts on the mayor's race?
Watch out for Spencer Pratt.
And I'll say Karen Bass is concerned about him as well, because she sent out a campaign email yesterday, pointing out all these something that she sees as negative. So it seems like her campaign's starting to take him seriously.
There you go. All this insight from the folks on the ground. That's what makes this show special. Spencer's numbers and Pete and Nikki's insight from what's really happening from the ground up. So thank you for watching. This is the kind of stuff you're not going to get anywhere else in the country, just on PPR. So next week we got more polling. So stay tuned. Find us on YouTube, find us on our CTV channels, and find us on our social media platforms, because we're there posting all of this information each and every week. Thanks again for joining us. For Spencer and everyone else, have a great week.